Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're doing a weekly meta breakdown for the Timeless Best of One format. We're going to do things a little bit different for this particular video. Don't have a lot of time this week to get through all this stuff, just it's my busy week at work for the quarter. So wanted to get out 6 new decks, quote unquote new, being decks we haven't really featured on the weekly ones that often, or just decks that have kind of creeped up, different variations, stuff like that, so kind of focusing there. We do finally have the data for Omnitell. In Best of One, it's starting to populate. We're starting to get it, hopefully by Best of 3 by the time I record that one as well. Best of 3 always takes longer than Best of 1. So we're going to take a look at that. We'll be back next week with the full installment where we look at, like 10, 12 decks. We go over all that, all the variations. But for this week, more focus on just kind of newer kind of decks, or decks that we haven't seen too much. So just quick look at the meta breakdown. Domain's the highest, 9%. Omnitell, we're getting it about 7.5%. Your burn, your shadow, stuff like that. The meta is actually pretty flat looking at diamond to mythic rank. Even doing like a quick filter change, it's pretty flat, all things considered as well. Mid single digits for all of these in that regard as well. So we are going to be looking this week. I'll paste all these deck lists, don't worry. As always, untap link if you want to use it yourself. It's in the video description down below. Everything you need's there. As always, like, comment, subscribe as well. We're trying to hit 15,000. We're closing in on 12,000 subs on YouTube. Free, easy, helps with the channel. So Diamond Mythic rank, February 20th through the 27th. We have 13,000 games of Best of One played. And again, we're not going in kind of sequential order, but Rakdos Midrange has made a return. Now, we've seen big Rakdos Midrange. We've seen like One Ring Shieldred kind of shenanigans with Dark Ritual. We've seen Rakdos Breach. This is more like honest to goodness kind of Jund. It's a Lurrus companion. And this deck's actually probably reasonably positioned right now with 6 pieces of main board discard between Inquisition and Thoughtseize. You have your lightning bolts, you have notably no fatal push in this particular version, which makes you a little bit weaker to Zoo. You are playing Unholy Heat, but Unholy Heat does require you to have Delirium on board, so it's kind of a mix-it bag there. This version is on full for Ragavan. I find Ragavan a little iffy in the format right now. Mind you, this version has a lot of disruption to either get rid of early removal or to kill creatures to block. Deathrite Shamans, Bowmasters, 2 copies of Molten Collapse in the main, which is surprisingly one of the, like, a lot of the decks don't have answers for Jingantha. This one does, which is kind of cool. What you may want in this particular build, I would maybe trim a Ragavan, play a Shieldred's Edict or Sudden Edict. There's a lot of Geist on the ladder right now, so that's a way around that. Kroxa for discard. Another way you can kind of mill over with DRC, and then Kolaghan's Command to rebuy stuff. Blows up artifacts, a lot of flexibility in the deck itself. The deck, you're playing your Swamps, Blood Crypts, 1 Overgrown Tomb for the Deathrite Shaman as well. Lurrus Companion. So Return to Fair Jund, good sample size, 84 games, like 72%. Then move to 5 color Winota. So this is from Alpha MTG, 72%. So this is a newer deck. He's playing in Best of 3, but you'll see the sideboard here, but it's not really relevant in Best of 1 in this particular deck beyond some of the creatures. So keep that in mind. This is actually fine for this. If you are copying the Best of 3 version, you may want to orient it, if you're playing Best of 1, that the top 7 cards are creatures because of Grizzled Huntmaster. Huntmaster lets you kind of exile a card from your hand in your library, and then you can go search your sideboard for a card. So it's kind of another tutor effect for Winota. So you kind of have 2 angles of attack with this deck. You have the creature package, which all can trigger Winota, but they also are all natural order targets. So you can get Craterhoof, Galta, or Atraxa. So it's another way to cheat into play things like Agent of Treachery or their bigger threats. Winota could also cheat them in. You have Boromir, which shuts down Omniscience, which is nice. Can be protection spells as well. Once Upon a Time helps you find your key pieces. You have like various kind of hate pieces, Artifact Enchantment Hate, activated abilities, some life gain, counter spells, another Boromir, Yasharn for like sack effects. So a lot of useful effects there in the deck as well. We're seeing more increasingly of these Surveil lands with fetches. They're pretty useful. Especially at this, you put lands into play tapped, so playing your second line tapped is coming in anyways, so get that Surveil value, get you that much closer to finding a Winota. Moving on, we have 4-color humans, 67%. This deck was a blast to play. I have a full video on it. We crushed with it. Playing a whole bunch of rainbow lands, all the humans. It's kind of like Hateberry without being full taxes. Avacyn's Pilgrim helps you ramp. Esper Sentinel for tax. Dennick shuts off graveyard abilities. Also lifelink against the aggressive decks. Juggernaut Peddler is a Thoughtseize effect. Lavinia shuts down Omniscience from your show and tell players. They can't cast spells there, which is really cool. Thalia's Lieutenant buffs up your team. Extraction Specialist rebuys you stuff. Kudro's Graveyard Hate and a Lord effect. Kitesail Larcenist is removal, and Reflector Mage's great tempo effects. So you can kind of bounce and get that value there. I would probably play, the name is eluding me right now, the 2-drop that's played in Standard that gives all your humans +1 power and ward. I would trim down a couple copies of the Charming Prince and likely play a couple copies of that instead. Lavinia was also something I was considering just playing Meddling Mage. That's another kind of consideration there. Lavinia wasn't great in matches where it wasn't full-on combo, where Meddling Mage you could also just incidentally name stuff. It does shut off Bauble, stuff like that, but for example, if you're playing against the Winota deck with Meddling Mage, you could just name Winota, which is kind of a way around. You can name Natural Order, you can name Belcher, you can name Fragment Reality, whatever you want to name. So that was something I was going to try out as well. But the question was brought up, like, why no Thalia? Thalia is a 2-mana spell that doesn't impact the board when it comes down. It dies to Bowmaster. In a format like this where a lot of removal is 1 mana anyways, they can still kill it on curve. Even if you have to pay 2 mana, it still kills Thalia. All these cards kind of lock out your opponent or have enter the battlefield effects or 2 bodies, stuff like that. They impact the board. Like, Thalia's a little bit of a speed bump for show and tell, but they can just like play an Atraxa or whatever, and they kind of get around you that way. But there's a full video on this. The deck was really fun. A lot of people were commenting that they had a lot of success with it, and people were mix and matching different humans, trying things out as you go. I would probably even try out maybe a different 1-drop over Avacyn's Pilgrim. I wasn't really using the ramp that much. I think the 1/2 that trains to blow up artifacts and enchantments could be a reasonable effect. Just trying out different kind of human, maybe tax effects in there as well. And the 1-drop slot could be reasonable. We then go to the dreaded Omnitell. So this is the Fae of Wishes version. And this deck is putting up still 60% win rate, and they just copied a sideboard and didn't really put the cards in the right order, but it doesn't really matter because it's kind of busted. So this version here is all in Fae combo. So as always, show and tell for Omniscience is kind of your core. You can still cheat into play an Atraxa. But this version here, what you're doing is Fae of Wishes is going to go and search for shared summonings once you have the Omniscience out. Shared summonings lets you search for your library for 2 creatures. What you can do is either search for, you always want to get a second Fae, and then you can either get an Atraxa or the 3rd Fae, depending on where you're at in the game. Your Fae is going to then get Approach the Second Sun. You cast Approach the Second Sun, then you either cast Atraxa or the other Fae of Wishes. Actually, no, this is from outside the game. So your shared summonings is always going to be Fae plus Atraxa, and then locks you up the game with the Approach the Second Sun as well. So you kind of go from there. This version here, you can also win at instant speed. So with Omniscience, if they play Agent of Treachery, Leyline Binding, any sort of effect like that, you can cast Born Upon the Winds, and then just cast your combo before anything resolves there. Dig Through Time helps you find cards. Same with Lorien Revealed. Just more disruption in this particular version. The Fae is actually reasonable sometimes just to cast as a creature if you need to, as a blocker as well. So we're seeing this version over the Mastermind's Acquisition. Notably with this version here, you aren't dead to Graveyard Hate. So with the Mastermind's Acquisition version, you cast the Mastermind's Acquisition, and then you go to your sideboard, you get the creature that gets you back the Mastermind's Acquisition from your graveyards. That could be disrupted by someone like a Deathrite Shaman, for example, eating your spell out of your graveyard. So we have this version of the combo here. I think I featured this last week, but last week seemed like more of a meme. This deck's been putting up results in Diamond now, and I'm actually curious. Even in Mythic, it's got like a 59% win rate, which is kind of wild. So folks, never let your memes not develop into dreams. This is the Realmbreaker Channel Combo deck. So this deck was a lot more busted when Channel wasn't restricted. But basically, you cast Realmbreaker, you tutor up your Channel. So you can either do Bush Clock, assemble the team, Scheming Symmetry, whatever it is. Cast Channel, pay 10 mana into it, get all these Phyrexians. Urabrask gives haste. You can do Elish Norn. I don't know. You assemble the Gatewatch of Phyrexians, and then you just smash your opponent that way there. So it's kind of a combo kill. You have Pact of Negation, Karn board. Karn can help you find your other Realmbreaker, a whole bunch of other artifacts. So it's kind of a sweet list of just jank that apparently works better than I would think. I would think this would work like 10% of the time, but I guess it's like Belcher. They always have the Channel perfectly on curve. You have a 1-of, but in your hearts, it's always in the top 7. So kind of cool deck there. And then lastly, we have 4-color midrange. So can't decide if you want to play Grixis, Temur, Rakdos, Gruul, whatever it is, whatever your heart desires, Jund. You just smash it all together, and we got this monstrosity of money pile, rare wildcards, mythic wildcards at the wazoo. I actually think so you have a couple uncommons. Okay, so we're a budget deck now. In any case, you have the Disruption, like Bowmaster in black. It's basically Temur black for Bowmaster and the activated ability of Deathrite Shaman. You're playing a lot of disruptive elements between Spell Pierce, Memory Lapse, Treasure Cruise to refill your hand. We played a Temur version with Jarsoul that was pretty solid. This version is kind of substituting that for Bowmaster. But Spell Pierces is nice disruption effects. The Lone Inquisition, because all you need is one to hit that show and tell. But kind of mixed in Brainstorms, Bolts, Unholy Heats. So just kind of a mix of cards here. Looking at this deck very quickly, you can also play a Jengantha Companion. So I would add that to the deck as well. It's free to play. And you kind of go from there. Probably pretty weak to like burn to some extent because your mana base. But Oko could kind of outsource that with just like food tokens and gaining life. And then you just have a lot of removal, death rate kind of mixed into there. That one's at like 56. So there was like our run-of-the-mill weekly decks. But like I said, just wanted to kind of feature some new configuration, stuff like that for this week. We'll be back with regular schedule for next week. But wanted to get something out this week as opposed to no content. So hope you enjoy. Catch you next time. Like, comment, and subscribe.